This episode, restoration of some massive French doors. In this episode, the Handyman Pros have a discussion about a recent job in which John and Larry restored a large size French door set with side lights. Lots of great tips. We had a blast. This is actually a tip from the field. Welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros radio show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair. This edition's entitled The Restoration of Massive French Doors. And to help me explain, I'm here with my ever cheerful co-host and old buddy John. Johnny, what have you been doing this week besides fixing French doors, amongst other things?
Yeah, well, that's a big thing, and so hopefully all this is going to come out in our presentation here for our YouTube viewers and that. But that was quite a project. And
yeah, this is a job we got from a friend of ours, a mutual friend of ours, and it's a beautiful home, and but he's just got some things, and we'll talk about it a little bit as we get going into it. But he wanted to have these really nice French doors. They were solid mahogany. They were probably what, John, 8 feet tall, maybe a little taller than that. They were tall.
Yeah, they were every bit of 7. So yeah.
So yeah, we did measure them originally, but anyway, they're big, and the whole door frame was more than 9 feet wide. I know because I cut the threshold. If it was 9 feet 4 inches to be exact, if you want the number. So the whole door set was very wide, and they have stained glass inserts on the side and up over the top. Well, in the doors, in the side lights in the door, and then up above the door as well. So it was a very cool job. So I'm actually turning this over to my old buddy John. We've got a PowerPoint presentation to show you all here, and if you're listening on the show, we'll do this as audio, but we are doing this on our video channel as well on YouTube. So you'll get to see the pictures of this door as well. So John, you want to take it over?
Yeah, let's go ahead and just kind of jump into this thing. We called these are some French doors, and I guess the first thing I think that we should kind of go through is kind of what we learned on this, and then we'll get into some of the pictures. But in a project like this, like any project that you get into, those big projects, is do your prep inspection and be diligent, right, Larry?
Very much so. And just a couple of quick comments sort of setting the stage. So this is on a home that actually sits on an airfield, which is very cool, because John and I are both airplane guys. So we were distracted a couple of times, not going to lie, as the airplanes were taking off, right in front of us. So it was pretty cool from that standpoint. But the house has, I want to set the stage that the house has a southern exposure. And the significance of that is here in Atlanta means it's in full sun all day long.
Yeah.
And it also is the weather side of the home, meaning that most of the storms come up from the southern part of the.
It's kind of the west and the southwest in that.
Yeah, kind of a southwest.
And anybody that's got a home that's facing that, especially you people out in places like Arizona, and that, I mean, you gotta. I mean, it's brutal.
It's brutal. It was brutal.
And luckily the weather wasn't all that bad for us. Boy, it could have been a heck of a lot worse. Like it's been in the last week.
We had one little thunderstorm, didn't we, Johnny?
Yeah, but
which is a story in and of itself. We'll tell that in a minute.
It could have been a lot hotter though. So that was good for us. Anyways. Yeah, it is brutal with when you have a house that's facing it now, and especially when these are wood doors. We'll get into that for a second, but do your prep inspection and be diligent, because Larry, you were the one who first took a look at this, so we didn't
Correct.
really know what we were getting into. It's kind of what we call the voyage of discovery, and it was one of those projects where it's like, Hmm. you
Yeah,
know.
initially I was kind of questionable on it just as to whether we were even going to attempt it. Folks, to give you the description, the doors themselves were very, very weather worn, and hadn't been stained or maintained. And I don't know how long, but it had been quite a long time. There was some wood rot in a hardwood floor, in a true dimension hardwood floor, meaning it was 3/4 of an inch thick, tongue and groove. And you could actually see where part of the hardwood floor had sunken into the home. And so we we were up. We actually had the ability to get up underneath it and look up underneath it. And in my look up underneath, I could see that there were actually some issues with joists and things up under the home. And so it was, or up underneath the floor where the door was actually sitting, and some potential threshold issues and some things like that. So we got in and we took a look, around. We took a look with some cameras, and we'll show pictures of this stuff
Yeah,
in a
we'll
bit.
we'll show that
But
in a second.
be diligent was the
Right,
key.
right. Because that really plays into, how you're gonna, for you handymen out there, how are you gonna, how long are you gonna estimate to yourself first is how long, what are you getting yourself into? How long is it gonna take? What kind of, help you might need on things like this. So anyways, be diligent, as Larry is just saying, and, do your prep. When you get into things like this, you gotta, take your time and be patient. I mean,
Yeah.
it really, when you start to go into a big project, you can really get, wrapped up here, and you just have to kind of step back every once in a while and just look at the progress you're making. I mean, that's the way I look at it. Instead of the end, it's easy to try to visualize the end, but it doesn't happen. If you want something to happen really quickly, right, Larry? It's not
Not
going to
going to
happen.
happen in this case.
It's not going
Not
to
this
happen.
one.
So you got to
Yeah.
take your time. Um,
And
and
this
I,
job too, just to kind of give you some perspective, folks, this job was a kind of a combination of, there were structural issues, there were framing issues, there was, I would call it, fine woodworking issues, right, John? Because the
mm-hmm,
the the refinishing of the front of the doors was really, I call
mm-hmm,
that was really fun. To me, it's fine woodworking. I mean, you and John and I marshaled John's services on that part. We divided our labor out very effectively. John went one way and I went the other way. I worked on the structural issues and things like that, and John worked on the fine finishing. There was a lot of sanding that went on in these doors and things like that. We also walked through that project in our pre-review. Like John was asking me questions. So okay, so I don't want to be standing in the sun working on these. Plus, these are going to need days to dry, right? Literally going to take days to dry. So, do we have a place that's covered that we can put this in? So again, as part of the planning thing, we had to set up the means to have them covered, which we use their garage, but we had other options as well. But anyway, long story short, it's part of that. Do a lot of your pre-prep. As they say, planning will save you 10 times in execution, and I can guarantee you on this one, it saved us more than more
yeah,
than that.
yeah.
More than that.
We had, I think we had about, what did we schedule this out for, like a month or something? I don't know what it was, but anyways, it gave us time to think about what we were getting ourselves into. And then as I was thinking about this, and, in the middle of the night, like I'm like sitting there thinking to myself, well, now I'm into this. What am I doing here? So
Yeah,
it raised more questions instead of just jumping right into it. Now,
and
I
there were
know
some.
some, well, let me
Go
say
ahead,
this.
John.
I know some of you guys out there that do things like this all the time. You can pretty much just say, okay, I know exactly what I'm getting myself into. I get it. I get it. I mean, I used to be able to do that too on routine stuff. We all do. But for you homeowners and stuff like that out there that are doing big projects, whether it's a door project like this or it's something else, you really think it through, and take your time, especially up front, what Larry was just mentioning.
Yeah, because the
Um,
thinking takes you no costs you no money and no aggravation. Well, it might cost you some aggravation because
in
John
my
doesn't sleep
yeah,
at night. But
in my world, it's very aggravating to think. So, anyways, uh, but it really is one of those things. And let me, before we get started with the picture, I'm just going to say one last thing here, and we'll hit this one at the end too. If you've ever had a wooden door, a finished wooden door that's even if it's not looking at the sun, facing the sun most of the day, you got to have a maintenance schedule on these things.
yeah, yep.
And actually an inspection schedule. Okay, always look at things like this. I know that when we get into this, that this door was really it wasn't properly maintained for a number of years. I think he had this door up there for what, 25 years?
Uh, at least 20, at
Yeah, I
least
think I
20.
think I heard him say 25, but
Yeah.
um, it's one of those things, and then you get bug damage, you get all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
Um,
we had termite damage here as well.
yeah,
So we had a combination of termite damage, weathering issues, wood rot. I think that one beget the other. Actually, I think
yeah,
the wood rot started first, and the termites got into the rotten wood. But be that as it may, we had a whole series of things happening in this particular job. And one of the things, John, too, this was also our efforts. I had a lot of communication with our customer, and the reason is we knew we opened up a 9 foot by 8 foot wide hole in the side of his home for 5 days, basically, because we had to
yeah.
actually
That
take the doors off,
it was a pretty because of where he lives. It's a pretty secured area, but it still made me a little nervous just having a tarp draped over that for about what, three of the 5 days that we were working on this.
3.5 or 4 of the 5 days.
So
Yeah.
that was that was one of the things that I kept kind of harping on. I know, Larry, you probably were tired of it, but were we going to board this up? And he was cool
Right.
with the tarps, but as we get into it, we'll explain that. So
Yeah, but it was us walking through the process in advance. We literally did the
Yeah,
job in our heads
yeah,
is what we
yeah,
did. And we took into account things like weather, and thank God we did. Um, so anyway,
yeah, yeah. So let's get into the pictures.
let's get into the pictures, Johnny. Yeah, sounds like a plan. So
So
here, these are the before
go
pictures, right?
go ahead, Larry. You came upon this first.
Yeah, I was going to say these are the before pictures, and so what you see here is you see these very, very weathered doors, and you can see that, but you also see metal, uh,
It's Yeah, it's clad. They had aluminum around a frame here.
which
Um,
we needed to take it off because we needed to see it. I don't know if you can see in this picture, but there's other pictures that we have where you also see the threshold is actually warped and twisted, and along with the fact, John, that the threshold of the door actually was canted the wrong way. So any water that landed on the threshold actually went towards the house, not away. And we've talked about that in grading jobs and all kinds of, we talk about it all the time. But not a good idea to have water heading towards your house. How about having it headed away from your house, right?
yeah, and
So
that was quite an issue. This piece down here, as we get into this, these are mahogany doors, as he just said. This is all leaded glass inserts that he had custom made up
stained
here.
glass, yes. Yep.
So this whole thing here, this was solid oak down here, and it, like Larry was just saying, it was all twisted and just a total mess with water running towards the house. Um, and what we said earlier is that the way this house faces, all the weather's coming right towards that, so it's just it was a real mess.
It was a mess. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's our next picture, Johnny?
So we took the
Oh,
doors
there we are with
off.
the doors off, which, by the way, was fully a two-person job.
Yeah, those doors were every bit as they were 7 feet. I think
And
were
they were
90
solid.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're solid mahogany.
And they were heavy. Oh, were they
Yeah,
heavy?
yeah.
So the first thing we did is we actually took out the stained glass inserts. And so, long story short, I worked for a glass company a long time ago, and I kind of understand how to work with glass. I also know how, like in this case, they were just held in with the molding that went around the door, which was an easy way to install them, because it's all you really need to do. You're just holding it in place. They don't perform any function other than to look very pretty. I hate to say that, but that's what they're there for. So we took those off, and then because we did our best not to damage them. There's a story there too, and we'll get to that in a little while. And but we took those off, and we took the one out of the center door, and then we placed those aside and make sure that they were hopefully supported well and weren't going to fall, because stained glass, if you've never worked with it, especially big pieces, the actual leading between the glass is very soft and somewhat malleable. And there's actually another part of the story there. Johnny did a little stained glass repair, which we'll get into in a bit too. So,
and my first thing was I had to get my Dunkin' Donuts coffee right there.
that's right.
So that was I had to supervise through that cup of coffee.
Yes.
So
Yeah. So anyway, this was this is just a good. It kind of gives you a bit of the scope, and you see the size of the hole that we've left in the house. So that was there for many many days. So anyway,
Yeah.
what's our next picture, John? Yeah.
So yeah,
Go
go ahead.
ahead. No, you go ahead.
Well, and that, this was just a picture of the rot that was, that they had some trim. They had some trim around the outside, and this is the threshold here, and you could just see everything. And when you just take a look at this is kind of a closer look at, but everything looked like this.
Yes. The
Everything
whole
looked like this. I guess that's the point of this picture.
right, right. And it also gave some detail as to what kind of trim is there that needed to be repaired and things like that. So yeah, it was pretty severe. So
Yeah, and they also had put down this stone here too.
yes, underneath, and was a manufactured stone, the best we could tell.
Yeah.
Um, so and it was honestly, I think it was poorly installed, but I'm not a mason, so I don't know.
Well, from the point of when we looked at the whole thing, that's why the threshold was warped because it went up and over humps in that stone.
Yep. Excuse me for 1 second, folks. I'm going to turn the dog out. My buddy is causing us problems, and she would get very noisy if I didn't step away. So it is what it is. My little massive 7-pound dog. She's a killer.
So, anyways, that's what we're kind of up against. We'll talk about that in a minute here. This was just some more after we took off the aluminum that he had put around all of the structure itself, the framing.
Yeah, and that was an effort to keep water out, and
Well, it
also
was that too, but it was also, remember, the bumblebees. That I mean the carpenter bees.
carpenter bees. Yes.
This place was eaten up with carpenter bees.
Yeah, and for those of you that aren't from the South, there are they're basically a bumblebee, but they eat wood and they bury their larvae inside wood, and they drill 3/8 inch, perfect 3/8 inch holes
Yep.
in every piece of softwood they can get their little chompers on, and they can be very very destructive. And then unfortunately the woodpeckers come in and want to eat the larvae that they put in there, so then you get woodpeckers on your doors pounding away and knocking holes in your wood as well. So it's the wonders of nature, but it's not so good when you're trying to maintain your home. So anyway.
Yeah. So here's a better look at what Larry's kind of we came up against, but
there was a lot there. We're just gonna say there was a lot there.
yeah, this is just another look at the old threshold,
Right.
as it meets the hardwood floor, the oak flooring, in the house.
Yep. And so again, some of that hardwood flooring had started to kind of cave in towards the basement. Some of the subfloor had actually started to rot too. We couldn't get good pictures down in there because it was really dark. Like you just couldn't get, and flash it didn't show what we wanted to try and show. We tried to take some pictures, so we couldn't get to it. What's our next picture there, John? Yeah, this is where you can actually see that the wood flooring was pushed down. And John, we've done some shows on repairing wood flooring. Probably the hardest part of doing, this is true dimensional, 3/4 inch hardwood floors. And the problem is trying to match it if we didn't save it. And I will say, and this is one case, we got really lucky in that the original pieces were still in great shape, and there was no significant damage to it. There was a little bit, mostly it was from when we removed it. We got a little bit of damage on the hardwood floors, but we got it out enough to be able to work in it, and we got the subfloor repaired. So you can kind of see it in these pictures. Again, it's kind of tough. It's sort of it was tough to get good pictures on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, but but what you can see here though, is that there's the holes are right through the subfloor. What was this? What was this originally here? Is this OBX or what is this?
It was no, it was plywood. Actually, it was 3/4 inch plywood.
This? Yeah. And so it
Yeah.
just ate away all the water was just pouring in here,
Yep.
I mean, it was it was really a mess, and then we pulled about, I think that this next row of hardwood floor up, I think.
We pulled a couple of courses up to get
Yeah.
at where we needed to get at. And we were real, like I said, we were really fortunate in that it actually came up. We We got the nails out without destroying the flooring, which is can be very difficult if you've ever tried to take up hardwood flooring. Fortunately, I guess the reason it came up, I hate to say this, the reason it came up is the subfloor was so rotten,
Yeah.
the nails had nothing to hold to.
Yeah.
So it just, they pulled up clean. I was like, wow, that's not good. I mean,
Yeah.
it actually wasn't good, in so many ways because there was no subfloor there.
And
So,
yeah, and also in this picture you'll see that here's the aluminum clad that he had, the aluminum around the wooden structure to keep the bees and the water off of it. But
yes,
it actually probably damaged it more than anything. I mean, it covered it up.
it was a Band-Aid.
It covered it up so you couldn't see it. And when we took all this off, and it was a real mess down here
A lot of rot
at
in
the
the
very
corners.
bottom.
Yeah, a lot of wood rot in
Um,
the corners.
and
So,
here was the finishing trim that went. This piece here is the finishing trim that went across this whole door where the seal meets the floor.
right.
There's a better picture, Larry, that you were working
And
with.
that shows a lot of the subfloor that's really rotten away. Now, this house had engineered beams up underneath it as well, and so
All
some
right.
of the engineered beams actually where the beams sat on, where two of the beams, there were four beams under four, no, there were actually five beams under what we were working on, and two of them actually had rotted through, and there was nothing sitting on the sill, on the framing sill, and so we ended up repairing those, and we repaired them actually quite simply. Or relatively simply, we sandwiched in some wood and just re-added wood. Fortunately, they were only back about 2 inches, maybe 3 inches, just enough to break to where they were off the edge of the sill. I mean, it was really that short, and that was a blessing. So we cut in some OBS, and we took two pieces of OBS, and we made a sandwich out of what was there, and then took and put 2x4s and 2x6s and 2x10s. We actually used a combination of different things, but we quote glued and screwed them. We actually took and covered them with glue and sandwiched them together, glued them all together. Basically, it's a lot stronger than what the original was because I way over engineered it because why not? The time is now, as we say. And so we got that done. Again, we didn't get pictures of that because it's just, you just couldn't get pictures of
Yeah,
it. You really couldn't.
it was down in there. But this whole thing, Larry is working on all this, but all this came out.
All of it. Yep.
All this came out and was replaced. But you can see it was just a total mess. This was all rot. I mean, I don't know
Crumbly
how much
rot.
longer this could have gone before
Right.
it really got serious.
Yeah, it was crumbly rot, meaning that you saw the picture of the shop vac there. That shop vac was there because I was vacuuming up the rotten wood. Like, I mean, you
Yeah,
just
it was
put the
just the
vacuum
whole
on it,
thing. Yeah, the
pulled
whole
it right
thing was a
up,
mess.
right? Yep. What's the next picture, Johnny?
All
Oh,
right.
that's John. So John starts working on the doors, so I'm turning it over to
Yeah,
you.
so I get the doors inside, and one was outside while the weather was good that day. But so started to sand these doors, and these doors were just a mess. And you can see here's the old. I didn't get to this yet, but sand all this down. Once again, it's all mahogany, and the grain was really split. Um, and some of it was a real mess. So I had to, do my best, do what you can do here. And I used some stainable filler in those areas, and just kept sanding and repairing as it went along. And
So, did your arms get strong, Johnny, or did you use a power sander
um, for all this, the only thing you can do is hand sand all this
on the trim?
and the
But the rest of
trim
the
and the
the major
trim
parts
and
of the
and
door?
then here's my little dual action, my little DA here that I did the rest with. Now this mahogany wasn't like a solid, it's not as hard as oak, but it was just weathered it was good to save these doors. I mean, these doors are really nice. It was
Yeah.
good. It was really satisfying to save these doors.
I think the customer told me those doors were about $15,000 when he bought them new 20 years ago or so.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't even know. I wouldn't even want to speculate
No,
what they cost
no,
today.
no. Those are all custom doors.
So,
So here
So
I'm.
back on the sanding. Tell the people what grit sandpaper you used, or how did you do the sanding?
Yeah, so basically what I did is I started off with I think it was 80 grit, maybe even 60, and just lightly ran that over there and got all the rough stuff off of there. Now, for some of you out there that do this a little bit more often, you probably would have to use stripper because of the clear coat that's on your doors. Um, but all of that was gone on
It was
this.
gone. Yeah,
So
there
I
was no
really didn't
clear
have to
coat.
contend with that. When I put that sandpaper to this door, it was just taking layers of that off of there easily. So I didn't have to mess with stripper, and
Right.
it just came, it just came down. But then I went to, I think it was 80 to 120, and then a little bit higher than that. And that really that's good enough for the for an exterior door to get finished up. But
Johnny, it was smooth as a baby's behind. What are you talking about? You did
yeah,
a great job
it
with it.
came out. It came out good in the end. You just don't have to, go through like you're doing a, like an oak table in your living room. Going down to
Right.
220 and then doing, so on and so forth. But
Right.
it really it did take a lot of that off. This little sander works like like a champ. I use this thing all the time. But anyways. It wasn't as difficult as I thought it might be, um, because of just the way these doors were that weathered. It looked awful at the beginning, but
Ooh, it
then it
looked
really
bad.
came down. I mean, it was a dust.
Yeah.
It was a mess of dust and garbage coming off of there. Anyways,
Yeah, and I would just caution you folks, if you're out there, if you're not really familiar with using like an 80 grit sandpaper, be really careful. Better to if you're uncomfortable with it, start with a bigger grit. Start with 120 or something like that. That's a little finer, and maybe do a short test with the 80. These particular doors, they were so rough, like you almost felt like you'd get splinters if you ran your hands down it.
yeah,
So it was rough,
yeah, it
rough.
was
I mean, it was
really
rough.
it was the grain and everything had really split. They were really in bad shape.
Yep.
Um, so now we're starting to finish them up, and I think this shows that my first coat of stain on there, and just keep working the stain in, and finishing it down. You just kept going and going, until I liked what I was trying to achieve here on this thing. Um, and I don't, I think I was, in between some of that, I was sanding this still, because every time you finish something up, it's like, oh man, I missed a spot, and then it just, you want to detail it out, and of course, your face, you're right next to this thing, usually if you're about 6 feet away from something, you're really not going to see a lot of the detail, which is the case on these doors anyways. It's not, once again, it's not like your coffee table or something like that in a in your room, but I got a little finicky on some portions of this, but anyways, that's because I was right on top of it.
Right.
um so
So just how long did you sand for? Just to tell people, what was the total process for doing the sanding and the staining took about how long?
just to get to this point, I think it was a solid 2 days. I think that's what it was
It
because of
was
these.
2 days, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. Okay.
And that included removing the doors and giving, and doing some of that stuff. But it's still, you were sanding for a full day and a half, just sanding before you started to apply stain.
Yes. Yes, because I wanted to get them. I wanted to get them completely down, and
Right.
so it's not because of the amount of glass in these doors.
Hmm.
It was a little easier to sand, right? Because I didn't have all that surface area. I didn't have to worry
Right.
about that.
Right.
But the detailing out the bottoms of the doors and stuff, and then ripping the seals off and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was to do it right. It took me I think about a day and a half to get that down to where I could start to stain it.
and the other tip is that one thing that, and John did this, very effectively. He did both sanding before he started to stain. He did a little bit of sanding outside while one thing of stain was on. But folks, when you stain, you do not want dust in the air. So sanding is not done in close proximity to your to
Yeah,
your
well,
things. And
especially when they put the poly on.
correct. Yep.
So yeah, I mean, once you're trying to make it dust free, and I'll tell you another something I learned, when you were painting, painting cars or anything like that in garages, is that, if you just spray instead of spraying paint, spray water, mist the water around the whole place. It'll take all the dirt and all the dust out of the air and just drop it to the floor and stick it to the floor. After I'm working on the doors, and while I'm doing that, there's Larry.
And in rolls a thunderstorm.
Yeah, we learned, and I'm cleaning up for the day, and I hear John, and he's holding the tarp, and the wind is blowing in, and the rain is blowing in, and so we wound up, this is a quick little squall that went through, but then we wound up building this little structure you see in the middle picture here to hold the tarp, so
that I didn't have to hold it, because I couldn't stand there all night or however long it was. But it blew like crazy. But anyway, so we built that A-frame, and that actually worked really well. So it held everything, and it held the tarp. We stapled the tarp up to the top of the door frame, and then stapled it to that apparatus. And we kept all the water out. We kept all the water out, and actually we used it as a sunshade later on because it was really hot the next couple of days. So.
But you'll notice here that we put a big piece of flashing in.
Yes.
Over this. Okay, so after this whole floor was fixed, we flashed this whole thing so that no water would get in there again and continue to rot anything.
Correct.
So it was quite a structure. You'll see all the rot here that was all fixed. We cut all that back up and repaired all that too. But that's the way we left it at night.
And what's the next picture?
Cross your fingers that another big storm.
Cross your fingers is really exactly it.
So. And then meanwhile, I'm back in the shop here, if you will, in the garage, with recreating the finish on the trim that we pulled out from the interior of the door around all the stained glass and all that.
Yep.
And try to refresh this because this was all water damaged too. So this was another mess that that we had to work on.
Yep.
But I will tell you this, and the little bit of a tip here is that, I've got a stain box. I got a box, that I keep all little cans of stain in. And then I've got a piece of oak, not that this is oak, but I got a piece of oak that I've got all the different stain colors on the oak. So I know which one is which, and then I can match the stain colors up. And usually I run into these little projects where I have to try to match the stain, and sometimes I have to mix a little bit of it together to get it just right because of the weathered of the stain. It might have been a correct match when it was new, but so then I, that's what I carry around with me when I
mix
do jobs
master
like this.
Johnny. That's right. Yeah,
it's not that hard. You just have to have all the different colors, and then away you go. So a little bit of a tip there. Here's the piece of the stained glass with the leaded glass, and what happened here was that the trim had let loose. The sun was just really trouncing on this thing. It bent this whole piece right here up as it slid sideways, and it's being captured with the trim. This was a real mess. So I took that all apart, took the glass out of it, used the heat gun, and straighten this lead out here, and then put this back in, straighten it all out, and then I actually wound up gluing this together instead of putting any solder and all that stuff on it.
Yep.
So, anyways, that was ready to go back in.
Ready to go back in. Yeah.
And there we have the finished product.
And there's the finished project. Yeah, we basically took and reassembled everything, put it back in. I will say, so when you're storing leaded glass, make sure that you have it well supported, because one of the side lights, I was putting one of the side lights in, and the other side light actually folded up, and I hear a crash behind me. And we had to replace a few panels of the stained
Yeah.
glass because it
Yeah.
fell over. But it all is well. It wasn't unrepairable. It just was a not a good thing, and it actually wasn't because of not for us being diligent. It's just that put some wood between them and kind of sandwich them up because it moved by itself. We didn't do anything. If I was 4 or 5 feet away from it, actually, thank God I was 4 or 5 feet away from it when it went. I mean, it literally fell, and I was nowhere near it. So anyway,
One
anyway,
of the ththings that you'll notice here too is that we took all this is all that aluminum up here, that clad that they put around the thing. I took all this off. We took all this off, and then I wound up repairing this and painting it.
hmm
Um, so it was a little bit of a little bit of a contrast to the dark brown doors, but it was really nice to be able to do this job. Um, there's kind of the
the before and
and
after.
after
Yeah,
of
quite a difference, an immense difference, and most of that was due to Johnny's fine stain work. I mean, I'm not kidding. It's I really did the structural stuff, and we needed it. I mean, it took us a full
it
week to
took
do
every
this
bit of
job.
everything, and I will
Yep.
say that these doors were finished off with okay, so this was a dark brown stain, but I think wound up putting 3 coats of poly
Polly.
on here,
Yep.
which is spar urethane, for outdoors. And
Right.
Helmsman spar urethane. It's really the only thing in my experience that holds up under the sun for any period of time. And what we told the customer is, and our last takeaway here was, do a proper maintenance schedule, because this will probably last about maybe 3 years, and these doors will probably have to be scuffed down and then recoated. Okay. And then if you can get away with that, you're doing good without a major overhaul of these doors again.
Right.
But the sun will just, that's the only thing about wood doors, folks. They're beautiful when they first go in, but man, they are, just like a wooden boat. It's maintenance.
It's why they don't make wooden boats much anymore.
Oh,
Much. No, they still make them, but
put it in the water, let it swell up or it's gonna leak. Um,
anyway, that's a whole nother show.
so the takeaways. We talked about do the prep inspection and be diligent.
Yep.
There's
Take your time.
no substitute for that. Take your time. I found that out. Just pay attention to details.
Yeah, and be patient.
One
all the
detail
way
gets
through.
away from you, then another one, then another one.
Yep.
They all kind of add up and
And
stack up, and pretty soon it's a mess.
yep.
And then understand the maintenance schedule, especially for you folks that have doors like this that are facing the sun or just anything outside. Is just we
That
talk
includes
about this.
windowsills, and it doesn't have to be finished, even painted
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely.
You got to check this stuff out and don't ignore it. You can't
Yep.
ignore it, because when you ignore it, then you get the really heavy damage. And in this case, he got lucky. I'm going to tell you, I think he
Yeah.
got lucky. It could have been much, much worse. I mean, we had 2 out of 5 joists gone, and not that you think, oh, gee, that's not that big a deal, but that's actually a structural issue, and it could have been nightmarish. Could
Yeah.
have. Now,
Yeah.
again, there was a certain amount of luck there. Unfortunately, the damage wasn't extensive. It wasn't way back into the wood, which is, again, was really lucky. So, and the termites hadn't got in there all the way in there either. They stuck pretty much to the outside of the wood issues, and they got into a lot of the softwood and stuff like that. So, a lot of really good lucky factors that went on here. So it's just kind of, or I don't know if luck's the right word, but it could have been much, much worse. That's all.
Yeah. No doubt. Well,
So,
Larry, that's
Johnny,
that's it, baby.
when you were down there at the airport, did you see that circular thing fly by?
I did. It gave me handed me another cup of coffee. Dunkin' Donuts. Hey, delivery.
Yeah, we do make this up. Folks, actually, we do. I was going to say we don't make this up, but we actually do make this up. Anyway, we make it up as we do the shows, because I just came up with that in my head. All right, folks, if you like this craziness, please send us an email, questions at handymanprosradioshow.com. Check out our website, handymanprosradioshow.com. Subscribe to our newsletter. We've got lots of great information that's coming in. We also are on Facebook at Handyman Pros. We want to thank you for listening. We will see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.